story somewhere. We'll find it somewhere. But the story is they were making wallpaper, and they decided, yeah, we can make portraits with this as well. So this is by one of the Brucker artists, Eric Heckel. Again, linoleum. This is, I'm really doing my best to pronounce these names correctly. This is Ernst Ludwig Kirchner. Kirchner, you may have heard of as a landscape, again, as a lino cut. And Carl Schmidt-Rottluff. Carl Schmidt-Rottluff also did amazing woodcuts, but this is a lino cut. Again, another Carl Schmidt-Rottluff. And these were all the Brucker artists. So I'm taking a look now at some more recent artists. I'm going to make this a little bigger. So, and I'm trying to, like, you know, because this is the kind of thing we want to do. The history of art is a history of men making art. So the more contemporary 20th century printmakers, I'm trying to, you know, emphasize women printmakers. This is British lino cutter Sybil Andrews. Again, sort of multiple blocks. Actually still getting the sort of liveliness as if it was painted with gouache, say. Irina Sibley, an Australian printmaker. Another Irina Sibley. I wonder if this makes it bigger. You see these Australian animals like a kookaburra, kangaroos, and an opossum. This is Claire Leighton. This gives you a very sort of detailed kind of images of the circus. And you see how very fine and what sort of delicate grades of value you can get with lino. This is Gaga Kovanchuk. I think he's Russian. I know nothing else about him, but I love this image. And I like his name. I mean, what's not to like about an artist called Gaga Kovanchuk? This is Lee, I can't remember her name, another mid-century German lino cutter, again, multiple blocks. And another one by her. This is Lou Stahl, is a comic artist, French comic artist. And I don't know who that is, but again, I love it. I love the image. And again, another one. Fantastic work. I love the details there. It's kind of interesting because, I mean, unless you were told this was a lino cut, it could almost be a paper cut. It has the same kind of very delicate line work that a lot of the work Dylan was showing. Helmi Juvonen, Native American artist. This is amazing. This is a British lino cutter. Her name is Gail Broadholt. She does a lot of prints of the London Underground, the Tube, and again, multiple blocks. I can't begin to count how many blocks there are here, but at least 7. And again, the same there. It almost looks like a gouache painting, but it's a print. So I'm just going to turn now to my own work for a little bit and just give you some idea of my process. So this is from a book I'm working on at the moment called Moondog. It's about a dog. So how do I do it? I begin with a sketch, which I usually Xerox and print out, so it's the right size to fit to a block. So this is the printed sketch. And as I said, when you buy lino today, it isn't actually lino, although I'm sure you could make prints with it if it's smooth, but it often isn't. So generally I buy this, what's called battleship gray lino. I don't know, was it originally ordered for the Navy to put lino in their battleships? Who knows, maybe it was, but it's gray. It's very inexpensive, easy to come by, and is very predictable. So this is like an 8 by 10 inch block that I'm going to cut my design on here. I lay the Xerox on top, the computer printout on top. Then I put trace down paper underneath, trace it off with a ballpoint pen. That doesn't work. Very valuable tool in printmaking and also in bookbinding is a ballpoint pen that no longer has any ink in it. Very useful. So it acts as it's a really nice stylus. When I've got the design traced down onto the block, I begin cutting, and I have various shapes of cutting tools that I cut between the white lines. I cut away the gray, leaving the white, and I keep going until my desk is covered with little flakes of linoleum that sort of get into everything, and I have to vacuum up. Here, I've rolled the black ink over the linoleum block, and I've taken my first proof in black. And from this point on, in this particular print, I used it to produce the second color. I used the second block, the same size, to register it all. That's the color now is blue, and then I added the second color there, and then that's going to be an illustration for my book. And a few of my own prints here. This is my Mother's Day card, which is kind of spurious because I no longer have a mother this year. But you know, I kind of thought it'd be nice to do one in memory. And my wife Lisa thinks that her mother comes back in the form of a ruby-throated hummingbird, which I think they're not unusual on Monhegan Island in the high summer. It's a night heron and an oyster catcher and the owls. And finally, this is a Eurasian kestrel. As you see, I'm trying more and more layers now and methods of getting more and more layers using very limited colors of ink. This is 4 color blocks. And that's it. Let me see, I'll close that out. And so, who should I make the host now? Okay, so.
Yeah, pass it back to me, I think. Yep.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you so much. It's fun to hear.
You are now the host.
Okay. So I just had a few questions to kind of talk about the show and, you know, see if anybody else has any questions. You can, if you do, you can put them in the chat. Asher's wife, Lisa, is checking those, so she's kind of moderating. But I will go ahead and share my screen for a second here. Let me get that up. So let's see. So all the work of the show is actually already online here. So there are like 50 pieces in the show. There's a lot of stuff. So rather than go through it all, you can just go and check it out at the oceanhousegallery.com website. So some of Dylan's, these are the top pieces are all framed. And then you might have seen behind me, these are cut out and mounted to balsa wood, so they kind of float, which is kind of fun to have, just kind of floating on the wall. And then Asher's prints are there's some up here, and then some down below the floating birds down here. And you could just click and see a bigger image of them. And on the balsa woods, there's a picture of the back of it. It's kind of neat to see the back too. So, but I'll let you guys do that if you want to look. So I'm going to stop my sharing. So yeah, I just thought I'd ask a couple questions. And again, like if anyone has a comment or question, just go ahead and throw it on there, and Lisa will chime in with those. So this is, I guess, for both of you, was there an inspiration for this Monhegan Birds show specifically?
Do you want to go first, Dylan?
Sure. I don't know what specifically it was, but you know, we both were showing our work on Monhegan for the last few summers, and I'm a big fan of Asher's artwork, and we both seemed to be doing a lot of imagery of birds, so it just kind of seemed like a natural fit for a show to do something together, and we like spending time together, and you know, I like to see my birds hanging out with his birds as well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's more just like a reason to do something together. And, you know, Graham's been really good to us in the past and had some really lovely shows there. So it seemed like a nice place to take our work.
Sounds good. Um, is birding a hobby of yours outside of art making?
Shall I take this one?
Sure.
Yeah, I was a bird nerd from about the age of 9. I was in the south of England, out in the countryside, with my dad one Sunday morning, and he pointed to a brown bird. It was like, you just think of British birds as the average brown bird, and he said, "Oh, look, there's a kestrel hovering." And it sort of felt like, oh, that's interesting. Oh yeah, these birds, they're all brown, but they have names. And from that moment on, I became very fascinated by birds. So I was drawing birds. I kind of started collecting a load of bird books. Um, and I was pretty fascinated by it right up into my 20s. Like a lot of the time I was at art school, I was drawing birds. And then I sort of got into, like, you know, drink and drugs like everybody at art school and other stuff, and I stopped. And then I saw Dylan's wonderful, beautiful picture book of his paper cuts in the Lupin Gallery. I guess you know, about 4 years ago. And I thought, wow, this is great, you know. And then I sort of thought, oh yeah, this is a great opportunity to start making bird art again. And so yeah, I've been doing birds, I suppose, for the last 4 years or so, sort of getting back into it, relearning. I started painting and drawing, and eventually moved to doing prints. So yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, like if you're a birder, there's that zero sum game when one minute you look at a bird and you think, oh, what is that bird? And then, you know, it seems like the next year you're wandering around with a 3 foot long lens on your camera, getting up at 5 in the morning. Um, so I've resisted that, and I have to keep resisting it because it's very tempting to sort of think, oh, I would love to photograph that bird that's kind of like, you know, flying 200 yards away. And, you know, I need that 3 foot long lens to get anything other than like a tiny dot in the frame of my camera. But I just, you know, I try and look, and I identify birds, and Monhegan is just amazing for its range of bird life, especially in the spring and fall. And I love the raptors, you know, and there's, you know, I don't know, 6 or 7 species of raptor that are fairly frequently seen on Monhegan. Not including the owls. There's owls as well. These are the daytime raptors, like hawks and falcons and eagles. So that's it. Yeah, that led me into making bird art.
So my answer would be more succinct. Basically, I'd never considered myself a birder until about 4 or 5 years ago, when I had the opportunity to do the artwork for the Everyday Birds book. And once I started working on that book, I really started to look at them with a different approach and I saw them differently. Just because I spent so much time working on the birds, and I continued to do a lot of bird paper cuttings after I was done with the book, and I continued to do them today still. But especially being on Monhegan in the spring and the fall, like Asher said, it's impossible to not become somewhat of a birder because they're just everywhere and they're so amazing. And